within a week. But don't worry, the only people who are getting recorded or showing up on YouTube are those who are in the nice little yellow box that's like around me, just if you're speaking. So if you're muted, you will not be on the recording.
And our authors this evening, not our authors, I'm so used to introducing authors, our publishing sales reps this evening will be sharing their screens to show you pictures of the books that they are talking about. So those of you who have attended our bookseller event know that we usually put links to every book as we go into the chat. We're going to do things a little bit differently this time. As David just put in the chat, we made a blog post that has all of the titles being recommended tonight. There's one link, you can go to that. And we won't be putting individual links in the chat every book as we go. You can just go to that link after the fact and have all of the books in one handy place for your shopping pleasure. And then the last note that we have is just to thank you all for your ongoing support of independent bookstores, us, or if you're someone who's visiting us from far away, your favorite indie bookstore near you. We and all local businesses are having a rough year. We're hanging on. Thanks to all of you. And one thing you can really do to help is to try to get your shopping for the holidays done as early as possible and at local businesses that you love this year. So please shop early, shop local, continue supporting the independent businesses you love, not just us, but other local businesses too. I think that's all of the important advisory notes for the evening. So we are going to get things started with our fabulous sales reps. Some of our favorite events of the year at the stores are always when our reps come and visit us and tell us about the books they love. So they're here to share that with you. And I think it was Michael Kindness from Penguin Random House who was going first. So Michael, take it away.
Mute and share screen. Hi, everyone. Yes, thank you all for choosing to spend your evening with us. Give me a moment while I find the right thing to share. All right, can everyone see that? Yes, okay, good. All right, so I'm gonna get started with, I hope everyone ate dinner and maybe had a treat for dessert afterwards. I'm gonna start with snacking cakes. The holidays are typically about fancy desserts and sweets, but we should all be honest that 2020 has kind of kicked our butts and we don't have time for that right now. So easy, simple treats are what we want. Snacking cakes brings us no fuss recipes for single layered cakes made using only one bowl and ingredients that are probably already sitting in your pantry or fridge because you've all been hoarding baking ingredients, right? You're all ready for this. They're baked in basic pans that you probably already own and are decorated very simply with either just powdered sugar or a simple glaze or maybe even just some whipped cream. Things like brown butter pecan white chocolate cake, cornmeal peach upside down cake, salted caramel peanut butter cake. That's the one I want. They're all easy enough for kids to help with, or they can be fancy enough to serve to guests or bring to a potluck, assuming that we ever get to do any of those things again. Next up is Nadia Hussein's Time to Eat. She's one of the best loved winners of the Great British Baking Show. And her new Netflix show, also called Time to Eat, is showing us that she can do a lot more than just bake. Time to Eat solves the challenge of feeding a family on weeknights and busy days with quick and easy recipes that are sure to please everyone. She even finds ways to turn leftovers into a second meal or something that you can put in the freezer for a later date. All of the recipes are indicated, or all the recipes have these little icons down here at the bottom that indicate whether it's freezer friendly, which can be doubled, which can be made ahead, making it really easy to sort of plan things out and get your meals all organized. Normally, these are the kinds of books that I would recommend that you give as host or hostess gifts, but since we're not doing that either, you can just buy these for yourself. The Book of Wine, the wine book, is by wine expert and journalist Zachary Sussman, and he gives an overview of the most important wine producing regions in the world, some of which have been around for a while, and he covers a lot of ones that are up and coming, talks about the different things to look for in the various wines that you're buying from these regions. And then the new rules of cheese. My joke is that the only rule of cheese is that you should eat more of it, but there are more rules. I guess rules is probably a harsh word. It's how to put together a great cheese plate, how to take all those little bits and pieces of cheese that are left over and maybe turn them into a cheese ball. it talks about how to taste cheeses properly, how to expand your palate, the history and fundamentals of cheese making, and even a lexicon to help improve your cheese vocabulary, which, you know, cheese, who can complain about cheese? We've all been told, don't judge a book by its cover, but I think we all do that anyway. The look of the book shows some of the best-selling books that have had multiple cover designs over the years, an overview of book cover trends throughout history, and insights from dozens of writers and designers. The book is co-authored by Peter Mendelsohn, who is a celebrated book designer and creative director himself, and cultural scholar David Allworth. As you can see here, these are some of the great spreads in the book, including this look over on the right-hand side at Coma, which was one of the first books to really cement this big book look that so many things have now. The type is big. There's one emblematic image that's against a plain background. There's a blurb on it. So these are the sorts of things that you see on so many books these days. And this was really one of the first books that did it like that. And it's interesting to get those sort of little bits of history and timelines like this one down here. So I think for people who love books, this is just it's something you'll just spend hours and hours looking through. I have a copy. I love it. I love looking through this book. Speaking of books, Ex Libris by Michiko Kakutani, who is the former critic for the New York Times Book Review, or New York Times in general. She spent decades sharing her opinions about books, and here she's brought together her thoughts on 140 books that she loves to read, to recommend, reread, and they span fiction, nonfiction, poetry. She relates that the characters of some of the novels that she read as a kid were so real to her that she was afraid that if she left the book open at night after falling asleep, that the characters would escape and she wouldn't be able to read about them anymore. She refuses to see movies based on some of her favorite books because she doesn't want the images from the screen to supplant what she's thought of and created in her own mind, which I think is just so great. A lot of the books have these illustrations here that have been created by a lettering artist named Dana Tanamachi, and they evoke either vintage book plates or book covers, and I think they're beautiful and enough reason to buy the book, let alone all the essays that she's written about her favorite books. Almost nothing is known about Ready Player 2, the sequel to Ready Player 1, which came out in book form 10 years ago and came out as a Steven Spielberg movie 2 years ago. One of the best parts about my job is getting to read books early. I have not seen a single word of this book, and I will not see a single word of this book until next Tuesday when everyone else can read it. I am patiently waiting. I cannot wait to read this. So I think for any science fiction fans, anyone who saw the movie, this is a great gift. And when I was putting this slideshow together, I put this headline, "Are you ready?" up here, thinking I was just going to put Ready Player 2 on here, but then I realized that there's being ready and then there's being prepared. And Steven Ranella, who is the host of the Netflix show Meat Eater, is giving us his tips and tricks and techniques and gear recommendations. They're all the things that he's learned, and he also speaks to hunters, climbers, anglers, emergency room doctors, paddlers, wilderness survival guides, or wilderness guides, and it has taken all of their tips, techniques, and the mistakes they've learned. They go over all the dangers that can arise in nature: hypothermia, frostbite, and the world's most dangerous animal, which he contends is the mosquito. So I think if you're planning next year to get outside, to spend any time outside, this is a great book for some of the big issues you might encounter, like a bear, and some of the simple things like finding your way if your GPS isn't working. Moving on to nonfiction, JFK by Frederick Logevall. He won the Pulitzer Prize, and this is the first volume in what will be a 2-volume look at one of our most famous presidents. It covers his birth through just before he decided to run for the presidency. So it's really the beginnings of his life and then the beginning of his political career. He basically did a ton of research that a lot of other people haven't done. He spent a lot of time at the Kennedy Library outside of Boston, and he's really infusing new life into the life of this president that we think we know. This really is the historical biography of the season, and so if you have a history fan on your Christmas shopping list, this is definitely the book to get for them. And then Jacqueline Winspear, after writing 16 Maisie Dobbs mystery novels, she's turning to memoir, and this is the story of growing up in a small town in England. She reveals a lot of family memories, like her paternal grandfather's shell shock after World War I, her mother's evacuation from London during the Blitz, her soft-spoken, animal-loving father's torturous assignment to an explosives teams during World War II, and then her own childhood working on farms and how she developed a love for the natural world and animals herself. In 2013, Alicia Garza wrote a Facebook post after the acquittal of the man who was accused of killing Trayvon Martin. And she wrote it as a letter to fellow Black people. And she said, "Black people, I love you, I love us, our lives matter." And that was the first time that those words had ever been put together. And very quickly, Black Lives Matter became the hashtag heard around the world. And even before it became a hashtag, she was doing a lot of the work. She was learning and unlearning hard lessons about organizing and fighting for equality. And this is a story of what she learned over the years, bringing people together to create change, but it's also really a blueprint for the next generation of change makers. So it sort of functions as both a memoir and a how-to manual for people who want to really make the world a better place. And then Picturing Resistance. This highlights the important social justice movements of the last 7 decades. UC Berkeley Graduate School of Journalism professor Ken Light and his wife and author Melanie Light have curated unconventional photographs of the most memorable moments in 20th and 21st century protest history. So for instance, in place of the iconic image of Martin Luther King Jr. speaking at the March on Washington, they have included a photo of him afterwards being arrested and being pushed down against the table at the police station. The book covers the civil rights movement, women's rights, environmental, disability rights, as well as contemporary movements like Black Lives Matter and March for Our Lives, which was the gun violence protest started by the Parkland high school students. Oak Flat by Lauren Redness. Oak Flat is a serene, high elevation mesa that sits above the Arizona desert in the southeastern part of that state. It's for the San Carlos Apache Indian tribe. It's a holy place, an ancient burial ground, and a place where the women, the young girls of that tribe celebrate their coming of age ritual. In 1995, a massive untapped copper reserve was discovered underneath the reservation. And you can imagine what happened next. A decade later, a law was passed transferring the area to a private company who planned a copper mine that will pretty much wipe Oak Flat off the map. That whole thing is still up in the air. Nothing has happened yet, thankfully. But Lauren Redness is telling the story of this race against time. She's an incredible journalist, but she's also an artist who creates haunting artwork to illustrate the subjects about which she's most passionate. You can see examples, some of those here. She has previously written a book about Marie Curie and about weather, which you would think a nonfiction book about weather maybe not so interesting. That book was fantastic, and the illustrations were beautiful. And as you can see, the illustrations for this are really stunning as well. And it sort of makes for someone who loves history, it's sort of an interesting, different way to experience it with these illustrations throughout. I think it's a book pretty much unlike anything your gift giver will have seen before, and that to me is always a hit for a gift. This little treasure of a book is about 59 trees and what we can learn from them and how we can be more like them. The trees, you'll learn about them themselves and about the way that they survive and how it's not all that different from ours. The juniper tree flourishes anywhere as long as it puts down strong roots. Mountain hemlock finds strength basking in the sun. A hawthorn demonstrates resilience as it adapts to strong winds and storms by finding balance in its roots. Other trees can teach us to let go of the past, to branch out, to resist the urge to overstretch ourselves. Plus, each of these trees is beautifully illustrated, as you can see here, and it's only $12.99. I think it makes a perfect stocking stuffer. And it's just, I think at a time like this, we need all the advice we can get, and we need to be reminded that the natural world is still there and is still beautiful and is still thriving, despite everything we might throw at it. All right, now for a little fun and games. Show me the Monet. The object of this game is to build the most valuable art collection by trading and collecting famous works of art by 14 of the greatest artists of all time, from Leonardo da Vinci and Rembrandt to Vermeer and Frida Kahlo. Just make sure that before the game ends, you get rid of any forgery cards you have in your hand. This game is good for 2 to 6 players, ages 10 and up, so it's great for families at only $18.99. It's really reasonable, it's beautifully illustrated, and I have actually played this, so I can tell you it is a lot of fun. Now a couple puzzles. I think at the beginning of lockdown, we were all doing puzzles, and it seemed like it dropped off for a little while. I think it's probably going to be back in a big way as the weather turns and we are all staying inside quite a bit more. So we've got on the left here, Women in Art, illustrated by Rachel Ignatowski, 500 pieces, 18 by 24 inches when it's put together, covers 15 artists from well-known figures like Frida Kahlo and Georgia O'Keeffe to lesser-known names like 19th century African-American sculptor Mary Edmonio Lewis and a Native American Hopi ceramic artist named Nampeo. And all of our puzzles come with a poster inside so that you don't have to look at the cover of the box, which is smaller than the puzzle will be. The poster is the actual size, so it helps, it's a little bit easier. And in certain cases, like with the Sibley, the poster is slightly different. So the Sibley puzzle, which David Allen Sibley is one of the best bird illustrators around, the puzzle itself, as is shown on the cover here, does not have the names of the birds, but the poster does, so that you can see what they are without it sort of getting in the way of building the puzzle. So I think that's a nice little feature. And then my last slide is Holiday Tales with a Twist, Mrs. Claus and the Santaland Slayings. April Claus dearly loves her new husband, Nick, but adjusting to life in the North Pole has not been easy, especially when a grumpy old elf named Giblet Hollyberry, I had to write that one down so I remember it. He's killed by a black widow spider that has been hidden in his stocking. So she thinks that this was not an accident. The constable does think it was an accident, but the last person that Giblet was seen with and was arguing with was Santa himself. So April Claus has to decide whether she wants to pursue this or not. Right. Will she end up on a very lethal naughty list if she does pursue it? And then Secret Santa. This is set at a publishing company in the 1980s. A new hire named Lucy is not really well liked by the people that she works with now, the people who've been there for a long time. And during a gift exchange, she receives an unsettling gift. Think like a creepy elf on the shelf. And for people who find those creepy anyway, an even creepier elf on the shelf that she puts on her desk. And after she gets it and displays it, bad things start to happen to the people around her, the people who were making her life miserable, a heart attack here, food poisoning there. So she has to decide whether she wants to do anything about this or whether she just wants to let it keep happening. It's creepy, it's fun, and it's perfect for a Secret Santa or a white elephant gift exchange, something like that, a gag gift, whatever. So for people who like holiday fiction with a bit of a twist, these two are perfect. So that's all I have. Thank you all for paying attention, and buy some of these books from Northshire after we're done.
Thank you so much, Michael. That was exciting. I've got to say, Michael sent me a copy of the look of the book, and I picked it up today, and it is amazing. It's hard to do anything else, honestly. It's a real problem. But anyway, thank you so much. And It is my great pleasure to get to introduce next. It's Nikki Mutch. She is our wonderful rep from Scholastic, and she's just a sweetie, and you guys are going to love her, and I can't wait to hear what she has in store for us.
Hi, everyone. I am so glad to see so many people on here. This is awesome. Thank you for joining us tonight. And thank you for wanting to hear about our favorite books of the year, which we are certain are going to become your favorite books of the year. I'm going to share my screen with you so that you can see some of these great titles that I'm talking about. How's that? Can you see it? All right. So the first two I'm going to talk about are both picture books. And the first one is by an illustrator that I absolutely adore. And I think anyone who shops at Northshire basically is told to adore because Jess, the buyer, loves him too. And that's Sean Tan's Eric. It is such a beautiful picture book. This is such a great gift book for anyone, especially people that you might miss. It's filled with this amazing artwork all throughout. And the story is about this little creature who comes here as an exchange student from a foreign country. We don't know who he is or where he came from, but he stays with the family and he doesn't talk because he doesn't know the language. But instead, at the end of his stay, to thank them, he leaves them a beautiful garden in their pantry. It is such a great book. Seriously, go pick it up, look at it. You will love it too. And then All Because You Matter by Tammy Charles and Brian Collier. This is for ages 4 and up. And honestly, this is one of the most beautiful picture books of any year, period. And it's a love letter to all the brown and Black children out there, but it's for everyone because people matter, children matter, Black people matter, brown people matter. And this book lets them know that they have mattered and they always will. Really, really stunningly beautiful. And let's see, the next one I have is nonfiction. Everyone loves some nonfiction. I am obsessed with this book, Everything Awesome About Sharks and Underwater Creatures. It is filled with facts, jokes, crazy illustrations, things that you don't want to think are true, like things about animals like sharks pooping under the water that are true. And kids are going to go crazy for this. It's 128 pages. It's $16.99. It's for ages 7 to 10. And it's just filled with so much stuff. Your kids are going to be reading this on the floor, all over the place, and they're going to be telling you all kinds of really great facts. Now we're going to go to one of my favorite genres, graphic novels. Yes, your kids love them. And guess what? I am here to tell you from Scholastic that it's okay for your kids to read graphic novels. It's okay for them to love graphic novels. Kids who read graphic novels actually score better on math and science than kids who don't. Why? Because they're thinking with so many different parts of their brain when you're reading a graphic novel. So if you've ever thought that maybe your kid shouldn't be reading a lot of graphic novels, don't fear. This is how you build a reader. The first one, this is actually coming December 1st. So next week, parents, is the brand new one by Dogman creator Dave Pilkey. This is Cat Kid's Comic Club, and it's just so fabulous. Cat Kid tries to teach all his little tadpole and fish friends how to create things for other people. And if you know Cat Kid, you know that he's all about love and kindness and sharing. And that's what he teaches people. So this is very exciting. Strict on sale date of December 1st. You can pick it up. Oh, sorry, 2 weeks. 2 weeks away. So you'll be able to get it soon. And when you pick it up, you'll get this really great poster that's double-sided with Dogman on the back. So your kids are going to love that. And then another one that I absolutely love, really fabulous art, is Twins by Varian Johnson and Shannon Wright. This is for ages 8 to 12. And it's about 2 twin girls who are as different can be. And boy, do they fight. It is such a great book. It talks about school issues. You know, those early middle grade years are really hard for kids. Even if they're not actively going to school, they're still going to want to read this book. And then more graphic novels, because I really do love them and your kids do too. Forget Me Nat by Maria Scrivan. The first one, Nat Enough, came out earlier this year. Absolutely fabulous. We sold a ton of copies. This is for your kids who like Raina Telgemeier. And if you don't remember who Raina Telgemeier is, she's the person who wrote Smile and Guts and all kinds of other graphic novels that deal with real kids dealing with real things. That's also what Maria does with Not Enough and Forget Me Not. This is a character who, when she goes to school, she makes all the biggest mistakes. You know, she dresses up accidentally like a peacock for Halloween and gets teased mercilessly, which is something that the author herself did when she was a child. She gets plucked by her friends who are sitting behind her in school, by her friends. Really great, and it also deals with some bullying things. So great graphic novels for you. Next, middle grade. So this is for your 8 to 12-year-olds. Keep It Together, Keiko Carter was a book of joy. When I read it earlier this year, right after the pandemic happened and everybody was sent home, this brought so much comfort, so much joy. It's just a book of happy. It does deal with some very serious things. Keiko is of mixed race and she gets teased at school. There are some little bit of racist issues, but the book all in all deals with it handily. It gives some really great outlets for kids who are having issues. And honestly, I cannot recommend it enough. Keiko's going to have a friend coming out soon. Next summer, Keiko's best friend, Jenna, her book comes out next summer. Show Me a Sign by Anne Claire Lazat. This has gotten a ton of amazing reviews. This book is based in New England. It's actually based in Martha's Vineyard, historical fiction. And the story is about a girl who is born at the turn of the last century in Martha's Vineyard, deaf. Now, I don't know if you knew this, but in the late 1800s, 1 out of every 5 people born on Martha's Vineyard was born deaf. They actually invented their own sign language. It came about before ALS, and it influenced ALS heavily. This book talks a lot about that. It also talks about the Native American tribe on Martha's Vineyard and how the white people tried to push them off. It is so well done. It's been thoroughly vetted. It is such a great read. Every single kid that I've given this to has gone crazy for it and wants to know when Anne's going to write another book. So exciting. All right, I have some really happy news. Last night, the National Book Awards were announced, and our own Case and Calendar won for King and the Dragonflies. This book is one of the most beautiful books I've ever read in my entire life. It is a book about a boy whose brother has died. His family is full of grief. They live in the Louisiana Bayou, and he has a secret. His secret is he's pretty sure that he's gay. He doesn't know how to explain that to, his toxic masculine family. This book is beautiful. It's needed. It's essential. It's the kind of book that makes your heart grow 10 sizes. That is what King and the Dragonflies does for you. 2 YA novels that are great historical fiction, would be great for adult readers too. Deborah Wiles, New York Times bestseller, award-winning author, has written this amazing slim novel about Kent State. It's written in verse. It is absolutely stunning. As a matter of fact, it will take you hours to read it. It's a very slim novel, and it will still take you hours because you will pore over every single line, every single verse. It is basically 8 different people tell the story of what happened at Kent State, which was 50 years ago this year. It is absolutely stunning. This is a great book to give to adults who remember that day very well. When I was selling this book, every single buyer of that age had to tell me where they were, what they were doing when they heard the news. Absolutely amazing. And then The Light in Hidden Places by Sharon Cameron. All right, guys, I'm going to give you a secret. This book has been chosen for a Celebrity National Book Club and will be announced on December 15th. So get your copies now. You're going to want to read it now. You're going to want to get on the bandwagon before the bandwagon's even here. The story takes place during World War II in Poland, and it is a true story about a woman named Stefania, who, as a 17-year-old teenager, taking care of her 11-year-old sister with no other family, how she saved 13 Jews by hiding them in the attic of her house, including when 2 SS agents and their German Nazi girlfriends moved into the bedroom underneath. She kept them safe. They all survived the war. There are pictures in the back. She married one of them. Their child actually became Sharon's best friend and has given her journals and photographs. And the story is absolutely amazing. So even though you think you've read a lot about World War II, you haven't read this. It's amazing. And then 2 books of joy, because we can all use some more joy. These are both rom-coms, and they both will make you so, so happy. One Way or Another by Kara McDowell, this is for ages 12 and up, is about a girl who falls down and hits her head. When she wakes up, she goes to 2 different places. One of them is New York City for the holidays with her mom, where she meets a cute boy. Another one is where she goes with her best friend to his family home in Utah for the holidays, and finally gets to tell him how she feels about him. You'll have to read it to figure out what actually happens and what path she actually takes, but I will tell you, it is fun, and it's just a fabulous, fabulous read that will make you happy. It's like a Hallmark movie in a book. And then You Should See Me in a Crown, which, if you've not read this yet, get on it. Leah Johnson, this is her debut book, and it was the first book for Reese Witherspoon's YA book club. Which is very, very exciting. The story is of a girl who lives in a small town in Indiana, and she needs $10,000 more to go to college. She's in her senior year. She knows what she wants to do. She wants to be a doctor. What happens is she actually has to run for prom queen to get that $10,000. That's the prize for prom queen. This is a true story. Are you ready? Indiana is like, prom is like Friday Night Lights for Indiana people for some reason. I don't know why. I guess they don't have a lot of other things. Sorry if you're from Indiana, but apparently this is true. I've talked to a lot of people from Indiana who are like, yeah, prom is like a huge, huge thing. It's like they go all out. Anyways, she falls in love with another girl running for prom, and the things that happen between the 2 of them are just beautiful and wonderful, and I absolutely, absolutely loved it. It will fill your heart with happiness. Harry Potter fans, I know we have a lot of them. There are 2 new Harry Potter books. One is called The Ichabod, which is not about Harry Potter at all, but it's by J.K. Rowling. This is something that she wrote and she posted online for kids for free during the pandemic. This is the only way you can get it now. It is illustrated by kids from all over the US and Canada. And all of the proceeds go to various children's charity that feed and clothe children around the world. And the other one is, just because you probably do need another copy of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, you definitely need this one, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone Mina Lima edition. What these people do is they handcraft these amazing books that have all kinds of pullouts and gatefolds. You can even get your own letter from Hogwarts, your own invitation to go to Hogwarts. Every single child is going to want this. Every single adult is going to want this, frankly. And then I just have some Klutz activity kits. Why? Because your kids need stuff to do right now. They need to stay out of your hair, right? This is awesome stuff for you to buy. It'll keep them occupied for hours. The first one is Mini Clay World Pet Adoption Truck. You make and bake 15 different clay animals, and then you build this really cute truck to display them. And there are all kinds of other little display pieces that you build. Tiny Art Studio, which I am personally obsessed with because it has a tiny easel and tiny paintbrushes and tiny little paints. It is adorable. Lego Gearbots. These are for your kids who love to create things. That creates 8 different machines. The Ultimate Spy Vault and Code Kit. I gave this to a little friend. He's the son of my husband's partner, and he's been obsessed with it all summer. He has built everything in it. He keeps on trying new things because it does lead you to try other things, other exciting things. And then I have 2 books that you're going to want to pre-order now. One of them is, I'm going to say it now, the best YA book of next year. It's called Muted by Tammy Charles. This is a Me Too book based on a true story. Tammy Charles, when she was a teenager, was in a girl band, and they got signed to a record deal. This is what happened to those girls who went to Hollywood to record their music, and this is how men treat women in the music world. absolutely amazing, definitely a must read, written in verse. And then the very last one that you're going to want to pre-order, yes, Dogman 10 is coming. It's on sale March 23rd. The title is Dogman Mothering Heights. Pre-order it now, get it on order, because your kid's going to want it that day that it comes out. And that's all I have. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for listening. And please let me know if you have any questions. All right, let me try and unsave. There we go.
Thank you so much, Nikki. It's always great to hear from you. Nikki is someone who, when she tells me to read something, I do it. Actually, Ann and Michael are also on the list of people when they tell me to read something, I do it. It's a fairly small list of people, and they're all with us tonight. So thank you, you guys. Next up, the wonderful Ann Kingman is going to share her list of great books.
I sat there all night saying, okay, I'm not going to talk when I'm muted. I'm going to remember to unmute, and I didn't. But if you just bear with me while I share my screen. Is that good? Can we all see that? Perfect. So I'm really sad that I don't have any titles with puns like Mothering Heights. I'd like to sit here and figure out a way to make puns of all the books I've chosen for your holiday shopping, but alas. So I had a really hard time narrowing this down. So I'm going to try to cram a lot of titles in, and I made it shorter by putting them all on multiples on a slide. So this first slide is all biography titles, but what I love about the first two is that these are both biographies of poets, and I really think of them kind of as sister publications. I think people who like The Power of Adrienne Rich will also love Red Comet. But The Power of Adrienne Rich is the first comprehensive biography of Adrienne Rich, who was a feminist and queer icon and internationally revered National Book Award winning poet. But a lot of people did not hear about her until they read Cheryl Strayed's Wild or saw the movie. Because Cheryl Strayed, as she hiked the Pacific Crest Trail, took a bunch of books with her, and as she finished them, she would just tear out the pages and burn them to lighten the weight that she had to carry. But Adrienne Rich's Dream of a Common Language is the only book that she kept intact and kept with her on the whole journey. And she even said that Dream of a Common Language was a book that she described as her religion. And so a lot of people discovered Adrienne Rich at that point. Rich died in 2012. She had a fantastic, fascinating life full of lots of changes in both her style and her private life. She was one of the first, she published the first book of lesbian poetry, for instance. So I think a lot of people don't know anything about her and would love to have this biography. And then Sylvia Plath, Red Comet. You think you know everything about Sylvia Plath, her early success, being published before she even entered college. She attempted suicide at college, her tragic marriage to Ted Hughes. That's all really pretty well known. Maybe you only know that she died via suicide, the famous oven. But there's so much more to know. And Heather Clark has just turned everything upside down. She said that her mission in writing this book was to, quote, I hope to free Plath from the cultural baggage of the past 50 years and reposition her as one of the most important American writers of the 20th century. And really, Sylvia Plath was so much more than the way she ended her life. And she really deserves to kind of get the acclaim that that she worked so hard for and never really saw come too much to fruition. But my favorite thing about this book is it's 1,152 pages. And so I think it's the kind of book that even if you think somebody is not necessarily going to read it, it looks really good on their coffee table and it will make them feel really smart, but it's also super readable. And the 1,152 pages, it doesn't feel like that at all. It feels like just a standard biography, but it's just really impressive looking. And then Hidden Valley Road, one of my favorite nonfiction books of 2020, and also Washington Post just named it one of its 10 best books of 2020. I expect it to show up on a lot of other year-end lists. This is a look at 12 siblings, or a family who is made up of 12 siblings, and half of them were diagnosed with schizophrenia. And this family, who the book tells about their life in the 60s and 70s, a lot of their DNA is actually still being used in research about the genetic backgrounds of schizophrenia. And it's kind of a cross between, I would say, The Glass Castle in terms of a tumultuous, dysfunctional family memoir, and The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, looking at the science of schizophrenia, how science on schizophrenia has evolved from the eras of institutionalization and shock therapy to now some of the more current research that's being done thanks to this family. But at the heart of this book is a family story, a story that is tragic, and also a story that is unlike any family that you've ever read about. So it feels like a novel when you're reading it. I mean, I whipped through it, but really just a wonderfully written book. Moving on to history, Metropolis is kind of my choice of big history book for the history lover. The subtitle, I don't know if you can see it on the slide, is A History of the City, Humankind's Greatest Invention. And this is a tour of more than 24 cities and thousands of years. So it starts in Uruk, the world's first city, which was depicted in the Epic of Gilgamesh in the year 4000 BC. And it travels through time and through cities to 2020 and beyond. And the author describes how the invention of cities really kickstarted civilization and how urban living has allowed human culture to flourish. So it talks about how civics really became important as a result of what happened in Athens. And global trade came about because of 9th century Baghdad. And the finance industry really started in London's coffee houses. So you travel through time, through cities. There's 2 full color inserts with maps and photos and depictions of cities in art. It's a really beautiful package. And again, it just looks great. It's a wonderful book to wrap up. The Zealot and the Emancipator by H.W. Brands, who is one of the best historians writing today. He really makes history very engaging and very readable. He's a professor of American history at the University of Texas. And in this book, The Zealot and the Emancipator, he contrasts John Brown and Abraham Lincoln, both men who wanted to end slavery, but men who took very different paths to try to get there. It looks at the politics that led to Southern secession, war, abolition of slavery, and a lot of it will actually remind you of some things that are happening in the world today, which is fascinating this far on, some of the same problems and also some of the same issues. John Brown believed that violence could actually help the cause of abolition. And Abraham Lincoln was very much more we need to try to combat it through legislation and through government. And so the contrast of these 2 men who had very different ends as well is really, really interesting. And The Quiet Americans by Scott Anderson. It is nonfiction, but it reads like a spy thriller. It's a history of the early days of the CIA. It covers the years 1944 to 1956, which is right after World War II, taking us into the Cold War. And it follows 4 of the original CIA operatives who were all very different men, and their stories were very different, but they all came to sort of a similar tragic ending to their careers, largely because the government and the people who were trying to keep controls on the CIA really didn't believe a lot of the intelligence that these men were bringing back. The 4 ran covert operations across the globe. They tried to outwit the KGB in Berlin, directed wars against communist insurgents in Asia, and they continued to bring back the stories of the Russian or the Soviet danger and the whole Cold War, all of the dangers there. And they really weren't believed, or their intelligence was buried because of bureaucracy and government. So it's a fascinating look by Scott Anderson, who some of you may know from his book, Lawrence in Arabia, which was a fantastic history of T.E. Lawrence. Okay, for the nature lover. So Michael had a David Allen Sibley puzzle. This is the newest David Allen Sibley book about birds. And Sibley is a top bird expert. He really is the contemporary field guide artist. A lot of people, Roger Tory Peterson kind of started the whole concept of field guides, and Sibley has carried that on. But when he did research for his new book, he became really fascinated by the behavior of birds, not so much the way they looked so that he could paint them, but why they were doing what he was doing. Oops, do I still sound okay? Okay, I got some feedback, sorry. So this book focuses on backyard birds, and it's beautifully illustrated with over 200 species, more than 330 brand new illustrations. And while the text is aimed at adults, it's very non-technical. So the entire family can share it, and kids will love looking at the pictures. You can dip in and out. You can look up a particular bird if you have a question, or you can read it straight through. But there's so much information packed on these pages. For instance, this spread that I have up on the screen, the first section and the third here shows how the scrub jay opens an acorn and why, and sort of the parts of its body that it uses to open the acorn. And then the second section talks about how it hides acorns. And in fact, scrub jays can hide up to 5,000 acorns for a season. And then the third section is the effect of climate change on bird behavior and how that is shown through the scrub jay. And falcons, these little black dots on the back of the falcon's head, why they look like eyes to protect, so to make prey think that the bird's actually looking at them instead of away. And so all of these neat little details, but the drawings and the paintings are just fantastic as well. Nesting cycle of a robin. I mean, you learn so much. You can just look at this book for months and months and not cover it all. And then for the cook, A Good Bake by Melissa Weller. This has been named a best fall cookbook by the New York Times, Epicurious, Food and Wine, many more. And this is for the science-obsessed baker, because Melissa Weller, who was nominated for a James Beard Award, spent much of her career working as a chemical engineer. And now she's considered one of the country's most respected pastry chefs. She's famous for her yeast pastries, her breads, her cookies, and she brings science to her recipes. The recipes include things like salted caramel sticky buns, spelt scones with raspberry jam, and even like hot dog buns. And there's detailed guidance. The way the recipes are laid out are really easy to follow. They give you tips on the sidebar. One of her famous recipes is chocolate babka. That's in here as well. And also little tips like how to make the top of a sugar cookie extra crackly. You bake the dough when it's warm. How to make toppings stand focaccia. You spread whipped cream on it first and put the toppings on. And then there's also master classes on ingredients and tutorials. This recipe for pretzels is 3 pages long. There's over 500 words on just how to shape the pretzel, but it's also laid out in photos. So if you want to follow the words, you can, but if you want to follow the pictures, it also makes it really easy. And so that is certainly my cookbook. I don't bake, but I have people in my family who do, and I'm going to make them test this out. And now moving into fiction, I've got Transcendent Kingdom by Ya Jesse. Ya Jesse wrote one of my favorite novels called Homegoing. This is very different in that it's set in modern day contemporary times. The main character is a an American who has ancestry from Ghana. I can't even pronounce it. And she's named Gifty. She's a graduate student in neuroscience. Her research is a study of reward-seeking behavior in mice. And she's come to that because her brother had a struggle with opioids, and that sort of led her to want to study this. But she's also taking care of her mother, who's in a deep depression. And much of this book is about the struggle between the science, the data-driven people that she works with, and the religious dogma of her family. And it's just a stunning read, one of my favorites of the year. It was one of the big book clubs. I'm sure you've seen it, but if you haven't read it by now, it's time. And then Hamnet, also one of my favorite novels of the year, an intimate portrait of William Shakespeare, though he's not named in the book, but this is a book about the loss of Shakespeare's only son, who was 11, to the bubonic plague, and a portrait of the marriage and the grief that ensues after the loss of a child. It is incredible. I think it's going to be on many of the year's top 10 lists. Another one, well, all of these books, if you haven't read them, you need to. And then The Glass Hotel, many of you know Emily St. John Mandel from Station 11. This is very different. It's not dystopian, but like Station 11, it weaves several strands, several stories together into a complete whole. And you don't necessarily know when you start this book kind of where it's going and what it's about. It feels very ethereal, kind of like the jacket kind of makes you feel. And one of the one of the characters, Vincent, is a woman who's tough and beautiful, and she works as a bartender at a very remote hotel in Canada, British Columbia. And there she meets a wealthy man who the author actually modeled on Bernie Madoff, and he's a con man. And so it's the story of their relationship, but then it's about so much more. It's about second chances, about trying to have a new life while your old one haunts you. And one of the reviews on this novel, I think really says it the best. It describes it as a jigsaw puzzle missing its box. And so as you're reading, you're putting this puzzle together, but you don't really have a vision of what the whole story is going to look like until the end. John Grisham, always a great gift. This brings back one of his favorite heroes, Jake Brigance, who was in A Time to Kill, which was Grisham's first novel. This goes back to the small town in Mississippi. When Grisham writes about this town, Clanton, Mississippi, you can tell this is where his heart is. These are the books that he loves to write. And even though he's written, I lost count of how many, this doesn't feel phoned in at all. It's a really wonderful novel about Jake Brigance being assigned to represent a 16-year-old boy who's accused of killing a deputy sheriff. And so it takes on a lot of the topics that we're talking about today: police brutality, how law enforcement may or may not get special treatment, race and class, small town prejudices. It's kind of all there in this really page-turning speed read of a package. And then coming December 1st, so we have to wait a couple weeks to read Perestroika in Paris, but this is from the Pulitzer Prize winning author of 1,000 Acres, which won the Pulitzer in 1991 when it was first published, and that was a take on King Lear, and it was kind of a very serious literary novel. And so this Perestroika in Paris is just a delight. It's so different from anything Jane Smiley has done, and it's a feel-good book, and it's a book that will just make you happy. It's the story of 3 animals, including Perestroika, who we call Paris, but her real name is Perestroika, and it's a horse. And she was happy at her track where she lived, but she's a very curious horse. And one day the gate is left open and she wanders around Paris and she meets some other animals, including a dog who understands the value of money and is able to figure out how to get them food. In Paris, this horse travels through Paris and meets other animals like a raven who dispenses advice, and a couple of rats and a duck. And she also meets an 8-year-old orphan who lives in seclusion with his nearly 100-year-old grandmother. And as cold weather and Christmas approach, these friendships bloom. And there are lots of happy endings, not just for the animals, but also for the people. And it sounds like something that, just in this time when we want to get away from everything that's going on in the world, this is just a really happy way to spend a few hours. And so this is where I was going to end my presentation, on this really happy note. But on an even happier one, we have the National Book Awards, which again were last night. One of the authors that we've been just honored to publish, Charles Yu, won a National Book Award for fiction for his book, Interior Chinatown. And this is a very sarcastic, disturbing, hilarious, heartbreaking. It kind of encompasses all of these emotions. It's a novel, it's a satire about typecasting and racism in Hollywood. Charles Yu is one of the writers of Westworld and also a novelist. His most recent novel before this one was How to Live Safely in a Science Fiction Universe. But it's formatted as a screenplay or a TV shooting script. And it's a satire, as I said, about racism and typecasting. The main character, Willis Wu, is an Asian film actor, and he's stuck in background roles. So one of his roles that he plays is generic Asian man or delivery guy. And he lives in this SRO hotel with other Asian American actors who also have these kind of, Chinese restaurant cook. These are the only kinds of roles that they can get. And these people all aspire to the big break, the big role, which is Kung Fu guy. So it's a little meta. You're not really sure where the line is in this novel between what's happening in the TV show and reality. But it's just really powerful and it says a lot, but it's also funny and it gets you thinking, but not in a real heavy way, though when you end this book, you feel like you've totally gotten exactly what he wanted you to understand about racism in Hollywood. So that is our newest award winner, and it also just went on sale this week and in paperback. And so if you're looking for a great gift, a stocking stuffer, or something for someone who likes things that are a little edgy, a little experimental, but also really topical, I think Interior Chinatown is a great one. So thank you all. I think that is all I have, and I will stop sharing my screen.
Wow, thank you so much, guys. These are all amazing lists, and I actually was making notes myself as we went along of things that for people I hadn't figured out gifts yet for, I have some ideas now. So this was truly awesome. And also pretty much dead on for time. We had said that we had until 8 p.m. It is 7:56, so we are just about out of time. So brilliantly done, all three of you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, audience, for being here. We posted the link to the blog post on Northshire's website at northshire.com a few times, so you can visit there to check out these books. We did record this event, and it will be up on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, in about a week if you want to go back and review. And always you can email myself and Davith. We share the email address events@northshire.com. If there's something where you're like, what was that thing that we were talking about? We are happy to figure that out for you and let you know, so you can email us anytime. Thank you all for being here. Come back for more great Northshire live events. We're doing another Rep Picks Night in early December. We have another Bookseller Picks Night also in early December. So come on back for those, or for author events, or our bookseller office hours that Davith and I are doing, and we'll see you sometime real soon. Have a great night, everybody.
Have a great night.
Thank you for hosting us, Northshire.
Oh, thank you guys for taking the time.
Thank you all so much. This was great.
It was so much fun. Thank you.